The chandeliers of Blackwood Manor cast golden light across Boston's most exclusive estate as 57 people gathered for what they believed would be their payday. Catherine Moore slipped through the heavy oak doors wearing a faded gray dress from a thrift store, canvas shoes worn thin at the toes, and a borrowed cardigan that hung loosely on her petite frame. At 36, she carried herself with quiet dignity, her dark hair pulled into a simple bun, her calloused hands gripping a cloth bag that contained nothing of value. The room buzzed with expensive perfume, designer suits, and barely concealed greed. These were the relatives and associates of billionaire industrialist Jonathan Blackwood, who had vanished 4 months ago when his private yacht disappeared in the Atlantic. No body had been recovered, but the lawyers had finally declared him dead, and now his empire worth $87 billion was up for distribution. Catherine chose a corner near the window, making herself invisible as she had learned to do during years of cleaning the homes of the wealthy. But invisibility only worked until someone decided to notice you. Richard Blackwood, Jonathan's nephew, spotted her first. His designer suit and gold watch gleamed as he laughed loudly, pointing his champagne glass in her direction. Did someone order housekeeping? The reading hasn't even started, and they're already sending in the cleaning crew. The room erupted in laughter. A woman in diamonds, Vanessa Blackwood, turned to examine Catherine with cold amusement. Honestly, someone should show her where the service entrance is before the attorney arrives. This is embarrassing for everyone. Catherine stood motionless, her hazel eyes fixed on the empty chair where the lawyer would sit. She didn't respond, didn't flinch, her silence only fueling their entertainment as phones came out to document the woman who dared enter their world. Near the marble fireplace, 26-year-old Madison Cole pulled out her phone, her influencer instincts immediately recognizing content gold. She angled the camera to capture Catherine's plain dress and worn shoes, her thumbs flying across the screen as she typed a caption designed for maximum engagement. Found the help crashing a billionaire's will reading. Someone's confused about where she belongs, Madison posted, adding hashtags that would ensure viral spread. Within seconds, comments flooded in from strangers calling Catherine desperate, delusional, and pathetic. Madison read them aloud to her friend Ashley, both giggling as the post gained traction. Catherine could see the phone screens, the flash of cameras, but she remained still. Her fingers tightened briefly on her cloth bag, the only sign that she registered their cruelty. To them, her silence was weakness, proof she knew she didn't belong. They couldn't see the steel beneath her calm exterior, the way she was cataloging every face, every insult, every moment of their true character revealing itself. Benjamin Cross, Jonathan's business partner, stood with theatrical outrage. His silver hair and expensive suit gave him an air of authority he wielded like a weapon. This is completely unacceptable. Jonathan would be horrified to see some random woman disrupting his will reading. She's clearly here to cause problems or make false claims. I insist she be removed before legal proceedings begin. His wife nodded vigorously, her emerald necklace catching the light. She's probably mentally unstable. Who knows what she might do? Cole security. The murmurs of agreement grew into demands. Catherine had been transformed from unwanted guest to dangerous intruder in their collective narrative, her crime being nothing more than existing in their space. Vanessa approached with clicking heels, stopping inches from Catherine's face. Leave now, Vanessa hissed, her voice loud enough to draw all eyes. Before you embarrass yourself further. Vanessa reached out and flicked Catherine's worn cardigan with one manicured finger, her expression twisted with disgust. This isn't a charity event, sweetheart. Whatever you think you're going to get by showing up here, I promise you're wasting your time. Jonathan Blackwood didn't associate with people like you. The crowd watched with eager anticipation, some recording the confrontation, others whispering their approval of Vanessa's aggressive dismissal. No one suggested she might be going too far. No one defended the woman being publicly humiliated. Their silence was permission, their attention was encouragement. Behind Catherine, Richard had grabbed a cocktail napkin and a marker from the bar. With exaggerated stealth meant to be seen, he scribbled "Gold Digger" in bold letters and tucked it into the strap of Catherine's bag. The room noticed immediately, laughter spreading like wildfire as Madison captured it on video. She's wearing a sign and doesn't even know it, Ashley whispered loudly enough to carry. This is the best entertainment I've had in months. Richard grinned, accepting congratulations from nearby relatives who clapped him on the back for his cleverness. The prank wasn't just cruel, it was a statement that Catherine was so beneath them, she deserved to be mocked, labeled, and dismissed without consequence. Catherine remained focused forward, unaware of the napkin but sensing the shift in the room's energy. She could feel their heightened amusement, hear the barely suppressed snickers, but she didn't turn. She kept her eyes on the camera in the corner, its red light blinking steadily, recording everything for the moment when truth would matter more than their laughter. At precisely 10 o'clock, the doors opened and attorney David Walsh entered, his gray suit crisp, his briefcase heavy with secrets. The room fell silent instantly. David Walsh was 71 years old and had served as Jonathan Blackwood's personal attorney for 30 years. His face was weathered with wisdom, his eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. He had witnessed the best and worst of human nature in his profession, and what he carried in his briefcase today would reveal which side of that spectrum these people occupied. He set his briefcase on the mahogany table at the front of the room and surveyed the crowd with patient deliberation. His gaze lingered on Catherine for a fraction longer than necessary, a moment that made Richard frown and whisper urgently to Vanessa. Something about the attorney's expression suggested he knew more than they expected. "Good morning," David Walsh began, his voice carrying authority earned through decades of practice. "We are gathered for the reading of Jonathan Alexander Blackwood's last will and testament, executed 5 years ago and verified through extensive legal channels." 5 years. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Jonathan had only been declared dead 4 months ago. Why had he written this will so far in advance? What had he known or suspected back then? Richard leaned forward, impatience overriding his earlier amusement. "Let's get to the distribution. I assume the company shares will be divided among senior family members." Vanessa nodded, already mentally redecorating the Boston penthouse she assumed would be hers. "The properties should go to those of us who actually appreciated them." Madison held her phone ready to post her inheritance announcement the moment it was official. Benjamin crossed his arms with the confidence of a man who had already spent his anticipated fortune. Around the room, 57 people waited for their names to be called, their patience thin, their greed thick. David Walsh broke the wax seal on the envelope, the crack echoing through the silent room. He unfolded the document with measured care, his expression unreadable. Then he began to read, and the first words changed everything. "I, Jonathan Alexander Blackwood, being of sound mind, declare this my final will and testament," David Walsh read, his voice steady and clear. "To those gathered expecting to claim pieces of my empire, I offer this truth: I have watched you for years. I have seen how you measured my worth only in dollars. How you called on birthdays only when bonuses were distributed. How your concern for my health manifested only when my death might affect your stock options." The room froze. Richard's confident smile crumbled. Vanessa's hand flew to her throat. Madison's phone slipped in her suddenly trembling fingers. Benjamin's arms dropped to his sides, his face draining of color. David Walsh continued without pause. "You taught me that family is a word people use to justify their greed. That blood means nothing without loyalty. That wealth reveals character, and yours has been revealed as worthless. Therefore, I leave nothing to anyone currently present who bears the Blackwood name or who has claimed association with me for personal gain." Chaos erupted. Richard shot to his feet, his chair clattering backward. "That's impossible. He can't disinherit his entire family. This is fraud." Vanessa's shriek cut through the noise. "Someone manipulated him. This isn't legal. Show us proof." Madison shouted at the attorney, her influencer composure shattered. "This is fake. You're lying." Benjamin's voice boomed above them all. "I'll contest this. Every lawyer in Boston will hear about this forgery." David Walsh waited patiently, his expression unchanged, until their protests exhausted themselves into ragged breathing and desperate whispers. Then he reached into his briefcase and withdrew a folder thick with documentation. He held it up for all to see. "This will has been verified by 4 independent legal experts, authenticated by handwriting analysis, and confirmed by psychiatric evaluation proving Jonathan Blackwood's complete mental competence," David Walsh stated calmly. "I have DNA verification of signatures, video testimony, and witnesses prepared to testify. Anyone wishing to contest will find themselves facing Jonathan Blackwood's full legal team." The room fell into stunned silence, broken only by Vanessa's quiet sobbing and Madison's frantic scrolling as she deleted her viral posts about Catherine. The reality was settling in, their futures crumbling with each passing second. David Walsh wasn't finished. He pulled out another document, this one clipped to a photograph. Jonathan Blackwood's entire estate, all properties, company shares, investments, and assets totaling $87 billion, are bequeathed to one person. The woman who loved him for who he was, not what he owned. The woman who never asked his net worth, never sought his name for status, never measured his value in dollars. His wife, Catherine. The word detonated like a bomb. Heads whipped around, searching frantically for someone who matched that name. Richard barked a laugh of pure disbelief. Wife? Jonathan was never married. This is insane. Vanessa stood on shaking legs, pointing at David Walsh with a trembling finger. Where is this Catherine? Show us. If she exists, why isn't she here? This is a scam. Benjamin's voice cracked as he shouted. Jonathan would have told someone. His own family. This is a complete fabrication designed to steal everything we're owed. David Walsh held up the photograph. Jonathan Blackwood, younger and laughing, his arm around a woman in a simple white dress. They stood outside a courthouse, both smiling with genuine joy. The date stamped on the back read 8 years ago. The woman in the photograph wore her hair in a simple bun, her dress plain but clean. Madison grabbed the photo from David Walsh's hand, her eyes widening as recognition struck. She turned slowly toward the corner where Catherine still stood, the cocktail napkin still tucked mockingly in her bag strap. Ashley's gasp was audible as she made the same connection. "Oh my God," Madison whispered, her phone falling from nerveless fingers to shatter on the marble floor. "Oh my God, it's her." Every head turned toward Catherine Moore. Catherine stepped forward, her worn canvas shoes silent on the expensive marble. The movement was deliberate, unhurried, like a queen approaching her throne. She crossed the room with quiet dignity, stopping beside David Walsh at the front table. The cocktail napkin that read Gold Digger swayed slightly with her movement, visible to everyone, a testament to their cruelty now turned against them. David Walsh nodded respectfully. "Mrs. Blackwood," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the shocked silence. He handed her the folder containing the marriage certificate, photographs spanning 8 years, love letters in Jonathan's handwriting, and bank records showing joint accounts kept deliberately private. Catherine took the folder with steady hands, opening it to glance at a photograph of her wedding day. Her lips curved slightly, a ghost of a smile, as if remembering the moment captured on film. Then she closed the folder and faced the crowd that had spent the last hour humiliating her. "I didn't come here for the money," Catherine said, her voice low but clear as crystal, cutting through their shock like a blade. "I came to see who you were. To see if any of you cared about Jonathan as a person, not as a bank account. To see who would mourn the man, not his fortune. To see if even one of you possessed basic human decency toward a stranger." She paused, her hazel eyes sweeping across their faces, meeting each gaze with unflinching honesty. "You showed me exactly who you are. Every insult, every laugh, every cruel word. You revealed yourselves completely, and Jonathan knew you would." Richard found his voice, though it shook with desperate anger. "You're saying you're his wife? You in that thrift store dress? Jonathan Blackwood married someone who looks like she can't afford bus fare? I don't believe it." Catherine didn't blink. "Jonathan didn't care what I wore or what I owned. He loved me for who I was. Can any of you say he loved you for anything other than shared DNA or business connections?" Vanessa stepped forward, her face contorted with rage and desperation. "This was a setup. You planned this whole thing. Dressing like that, standing there silently while you wanted us to look bad. You manipulated us." Catherine's expression remained calm, but her voice grew colder, each word precise and cutting. "I didn't manipulate you. I gave you a choice. You could have asked who I was. You could have offered basic courtesy to a stranger. You could have shown respect in a moment meant to honor Jonathan's memory. Instead, you mocked me, photographed me, labeled me, and tried to humiliate me for entertainment. Those were your choices, not mine." She reached into her cloth bag and pulled out a small remote. The crowd watched with growing dread as she pressed a button. A large monitor on the wall flickered to life, showing security footage from cameras positioned throughout the room. Every insult, every laugh, every cruel moment played in crystal clarity with timestamps and audio. "Jonathan isn't dead," Catherine said quietly, each word landing like thunder. "He's alive, and he's been watching everything." The monitor switched to a live feed. Jonathan Blackwood sat in a chair, very much alive, his dark hair touched with gray, his blue eyes sharp and unforgiving. The timestamp in the corner showed the current date and time. The room erupted in gasps and denials, but Jonathan's voice came through the speakers, silencing them all. "You thought this was your moment," Jonathan said, his voice steady and cold. "Your chance to divide up my life like vultures. But Catherine designed this test, and you all failed spectacularly. Not one of you showed kindness. Not one of you questioned your cruelty. You are everything I suspected you were, and now the world will see it too." David Walsh pulled out a final document. "Anyone who insulted Mrs. Blackwood today, documented by security footage and witnesses, is permanently cut off. No shares, no properties, no contact. Security will escort you out." Guards entered as names were read: Richard, Vanessa, Madison, Benjamin, Ashley. One by one, they were led from the manor, their protests fading into the morning air. Catherine stood beside the monitor showing Jonathan's face, vindicated not by wealth, but by truth revealed. 3 weeks later, Catherine stood on the balcony of their private cabin in the mountains of Vermont, far from Boston's scrutiny. Jonathan emerged from inside, carrying 2 cups of coffee, his death now publicly revealed as an elaborate test that had exposed dozens of opportunists. The media had exploded with the story. Madison's viral posts about Catherine had resurfaced, this time painting Madison as the villain. Richard faced lawsuits from former business partners who discovered his embezzlement attempts during Jonathan's death. Vanessa's social standing crumbled overnight. "Any regrets?" Jonathan asked, handing Catherine her coffee. She thought of the 3 people who had remained kind that day, the groundskeeper who'd offer her water, the young secretary who'd smiled genuinely, the elderly cousin who'd simply nodded respectfully. They'd each received substantial trust funds and personal apologies. "None," Catherine said, leaning into her husband's embrace. They needed to see themselves clearly. Below them, morning mist rolled across untouched forest. Somewhere in Boston, their lawyers were establishing foundations, scholarships, and programs that would help people who actually needed it, not those who simply wanted it. Catherine smiled. Justice, she'd learned, wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was simply letting truth speak for itself. This is a story of triumph. Did the protagonist make the right decisions? If you were in this situation, what would you do? Share your opinion in the comments. We want to know what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Memorable Stories and Overcoming, where inspiring stories of triumph and justice are shared daily.